Time now to talk to the government. Delighted to say I'm joined by the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting. A very good morning to you, Minister.
Good morning.
Can we just start off the back of that report from Shingi relating to the campaign by Esther Jai, following, of course, the very sad passing, the murder of her daughter, Brianna. She's calling for smartphones to be banned in schools. There's growing momentum in that direction.
Yeah, and many schools already take that action, and the Education Secretary, the Science and Technology Secretary and I are all looking at this issue of smartphone use because, of course, it's not just in school where children are at risk of being distracted or, at worse, being subject to abuse, to harm, to exploitation and grooming. It is also out on the streets when people return home. So this is a serious issue, and I take my hat off to Esther Jai, Brianna's mum, for the work, the campaign that she's done since she lost her daughter in the most horrific circumstances. We do take what she says really seriously. And as I say, the Science and Technology Secretary is leading this work, looking at what more we can do on online harms generally affecting children and young people, and this issue of smartphone use and the impact it has on children's education, learning, health and well-being. Because, I mean, as many of us know from our own smartphone use, there are actually lots of potential benefits, and I think lots of educational benefits, lots of potential well-being benefits from use of apps and technology and being and feeling connected. But we also know there's risk of harms, and particular risk of young people, and that's why we take this issue so seriously.
I wanted to touch on borrowing costs, Minister. How worried are you about them?
Well, look, when we came in, people saw the state of the public finances. Borrowing was at record highs, and the Chancellor, since she came in last year, has been determined to restore stability to our economy, to get growth back into our economy, and to create the conditions where we can get the nation's finances back to health, our public services back to health, and also the finances of every family back to health too. There have been some encouraging signs in the right direction. We've seen some of the highest growth in the G7. We've seen wages rising faster than living costs for the first time in many, many years. But the Chancellor would be the first to say there is much more to do. Britain is not out of the woods. And that is why the discipline and the focus that she's brought on cost of living, on economic growth and creating the conditions for businesses to be successful is really important. And the discipline we show as a cabinet in terms of public spending is really important too.
But I mean, I get the point that things are, broadly stable as we stand. But on borrowing costs, on the 30-year borrowing rate, for example, we're up 1.2% since you took power, and perhaps more worryingly, up 0.3% in just 1 month, 5.3 to 5.6, 5.7%. I mean, that is a trend, if it continues, that we wouldn't be able to afford.
Well, as a rule, government ministers do not comment on specific market movements, but to take the general thrust of the question you're putting to me, when we were in opposition, as Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves was very clear in terms of our manifesto and the promises we made being fully costed and fully funded, that you can't just either tax, spend or borrow your way out of the country's problems. And that is why, as Chancellor, as well as actually providing record investment, for example, into our NHS, she also has to use the word no quite a lot, regularly and repeatedly sometimes, with cabinet colleagues, with campaigners, with people who often come to her with very good and very worthy cases for spending and investment, but she will not spend more than the country can afford. And that is because she's very mindful, not least because she is the person who's confronted with this challenge every single day as Chancellor, that when we came in, we saw record levels of borrowing, record levels of tax, and we've got family finances and businesses under real pressure. And we saw the damage that the chaos of the mini budget under Liz Truss did. She is determined not to repeat that level of self-inflicted political harm, and instead she has brought stability and the conditions for Britain to grow. And as well as making those decisions domestically, the work that the Prime Minister and Jonathan Reynolds, the Trade Secretary, have been doing internationally to secure those trade deals with our nearest and biggest trading partner, Europe, the strongest economy in the world, the United States, and the fastest growing emerging economy, big global power in India. Those trade deals are really significant because they are also about creating the conditions for Britain to grow, as well as in the case of the US trade deal, protecting thousands of jobs, British jobs, as the Prime Minister did with the US trade deal with Jaguar Land Rover, for example. So there's a lot more to do on the economy. We inherited a real mess. We're sorting the country out, getting it out of the mess that we inherited, but there's more to do, and we're not remotely complacent about that.
But Mr. Streeting, I mean, you mentioned Liz Truss there, and in an interview with me this morning, she did commend your trade deals, but equally, you said you don't want to cause the same problems that she did. And as she pointed out to me, borrowing costs are significantly higher today than at the peak of her troubles during the mini budget. So by that measure, you're causing more trouble yourselves.
Well, I think the last person that Rachel Reeves will be taking advice from on effective management of the economy and public finances is Liz Truss. And to be honest, how she's got the nerve to show her face after what she did to the country is just, I mean, remarkable lack of self-awareness, to be honest. Governments, all governments, Labour and Conservative, sometimes encounter economic shocks, economic crises, domestically, internationally. What we have never seen in our lifetimes was a level of self-inflicted harm as a direct result of political choices made by the government, as Liz Truss inflicted with her mini budget. So we'll take no lectures from Liz Truss. In fact, we quite often resent former Conservatives popping up, complaining about the choices we're making as we clean up the mess they left behind, a bit like the arsonist complaining that the fire brigade isn't doing a good enough job.
I mean, you think she's not allowed to show her face anymore?
I just think she's got some front. I mean, you know, if I were Liz Truss, I would be keeping my head down and certainly not offering myself up as a commentator on the economy, unless it's to pop up and use the word sorry regularly and repeatedly. But she doesn't do that. She's got no shame, no humility, no remorse. Thank goodness we've seen an end to that chaos. We're not going to repeat those mistakes. We've got a Chancellor who is cleaning up the mess the Conservatives left behind. And in the decisions that she makes every single day, holding at the forefront of her mind what is in the best interest of families' finances, what is in the best interests of businesses, and what is in the best interests of the nation's finances and the economy. That is why we've seen some of the fastest growth in the G7 under this Labour government. But look, even on the best numbers that we've achieved in the last year, Rachel would be the first person to say there is so much more to do. We want to go from strength to strength. It takes time cleaning up the level of mess and the breadth of crises that we inherited, but we are finally getting Britain moving in the right direction. We want Britain to be on the up. We should feel confident actually about so many of the strengths of this country. And as you heard from the Prime Minister at the beginning of this week, coming back from summer, you have got a government that's rolled up its sleeves, that is dealing with the big challenges facing this country. There's a lot we've done in our first year, but we know so much more to do, and we're up for the fight, up for the challenge, and not remotely complacent.
Two more quick questions, Minister. One coming on caffeine, but first one on Graham Linehan, the comedian who was arrested at Heathrow Airport by 5 armed police officers. It's not the only, for a tweet that he put out, it's not the only example of that sort of thing in the last few months. What's going on?
So firstly, as a government minister, I'm not allowed to comment on a live police investigation, and operational police decisions are rightly independent of politicians. So I won't comment on the specific case, but I will absolutely take on the general points that you raise. The Prime Minister and the Home Secretary have been very clear that when it comes to the safety of our streets and our communities, we would rather see our police on the streets rather than policing tweets. Now, it's the easiest thing in the world for people to criticise the police, but they are enforcing laws that Parliament has passed and asked them to enforce. So if we haven't got the balance right, as Parliament over successive governments, that is something that we need to look at, because the Home Secretary is very clear about what her priorities are when it comes to policing, neighbourhood policing, making sure that we've got visible policing in our communities, tackling crime, antisocial behaviour, drug dealing, and making sure that people feel safe walking down the streets and the high streets where they live. And secondly, making sure that we keep our borders safe. We've seen record levels of returns of people who had no legal right to be here, record levels of deportations thanks to this Home Secretary. More to do on both of those issues. And one of the things the Home Secretary is looking at is, are we tasking the police? Are we asking the police to focus on the right things? And if we've distracted as Parliament under the previous government, if they've been distracted being asked to do things we don't see as a priority, well, that's something that we will deal with.
Finally, tell us what you're doing around caffeinated sugary drinks.
Yeah, so today we are delivering on one of our manifesto commitments, which is to ban the sale of high caffeine energy drinks to under 16s. The overwhelming majority of parents, 8 in 10, are concerned about this and have urged government to act. Majority of teachers see the impact of children's learning in the classroom and their concentration, and doctors have warned about the health impact of these drinks, which are high sugar and can lead to longer term health problems. I mean, look, today kids are going back to school. I actually sat in my old secondary school here this morning, and on the way to school, at lunchtime and after school, a lot of these kids are necking these drinks, which are the equivalent of 4 cans of Coke. It does impact on their health. It does impact on their learning. And that's why this government is acting. A lot of retailers are already doing this. So one of the things we're doing over the next 12 weeks is consulting with businesses, doing this with businesses rather than to businesses, to make sure that this works in practice, that we deliver on the promise we made at the last election. And it's just one of many things we're doing for children and young people. You heard earlier this week about the government's great new childcare offer, making sure that parents of under 5s get 30 hours free childcare. We've lifted 100,000 children out of poverty with the expansion of free school meal access, which is kicking in this year. Lots done in our first year, lots more to do. It's not just back to school for the kids this week, it's back to work for the government, and we're getting on delivering the change that you voted for.
Wes Streeting, thanks so much for joining us. Good to see you.
Thanks a lot.